everybody, and welcome to another live Wednesday night edition here on the Rock Pile. Tonight's special guest, I'm pumped up to talk to Nick Carparelli, the executive director for college football bowl season. My favorite time of the year, a close second, March Madness, of course, and no other time than bowl season. It kicked off here in December. Lots going on in the college football world. Some news tonight that just came in across social media. Wake Forest looking for an opponent. So we'll talk to Nick about that and some more things going on here. So bowl season kicks off. So no other way to kick it off than to bring Nick on. So let's get him on. How we doing, Nick?
Hey, Rocky. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for taking the time tonight. I really appreciate it.
No, not a problem. It's bowl season. What else am I going to be doing besides talking about bowl games?
Well, Nick, I was listening to your podcast that you were just talking about, and I went back to some of the old ones. So I'm a huge Joe Klatt guy. I'm a huge Kirk Herbstreit guy. So I went back to some of the other ones, and I think Joe Klatt said it best for you. I grew up, I was a Dick Vitale guy. I wanted to get into broadcasting because I love Dickie V, and I thought Dickie V had the best job in the world. Joe Klatt hit it the best. You have the best job on the face of this planet. College football, bowl season, it doesn't get better than that.
I would agree with you. I'm very fortunate. I actually tell people that all the time. I think I might have the best job in sports, especially with what we're building with the bowl season brand. There's 44 bowl games. They basically handed me the keys to a 100-year-old American sports tradition that everybody loves. And says, here, take it and make it even better. So I don't know how you can have a better job than that.
Absolutely. Well, Nick, I wanted to ask you were a grad assistant at Syracuse and Paul Pasqualoni. So for us upstate people, Coach Pasqualoni is a legend. And with Donovan McNabb up that way too. What was it like to be a grad assistant for him?
It was awesome. I had the unique good fortune of knowing Coach Pasqualoni since I was 5 years old. He and my dad used to teach elementary phys ed together, so they were both my phys ed teacher. And when he became the head coach at Syracuse in 1991, I had just finished up my undergraduate degree, and he hired me as a GA in 92 when we went to the Fiesta Bowl, beat Colorado with Marvin Graves and Kadri Ismail, Shelby Hill, Chris Gedney. So I was very fortunate. It was great to work for him. It wasn't easy, even knowing him as well as I did, but it was worth it. I learned so many lessons from him. And, it always seemed like the fans of upstate New York didn't appreciate him at the time he was there. I don't think people realize in the ecosystem of college football how hard it is to win at Syracuse, but I think they've probably figured out how hard it is since the almost 20 years since he's left.
Yeah, and Coach Peace had a great career, still coaching. He's had some journeys in the NFL and in college, but I think a lot of us people, even myself going back, you look back and say, we were spoiled because Coach P won some games and things might not have ended that great for him. But I think now when you look back, I think people would have hung on to Paul Pasqualoni a little bit longer.
Absolutely. And people don't realize when he left, they they hired a new coach. They were 2-10. I thought they had a lot of talent coming back, and he had also recruited Ray Rice and Courtney Green, who both went to Rutgers. Yep. Once Syracuse made the decision to separate from Coach B. Otherwise, they'd have been running around the Carrier Dome, and they'd have been pretty good. But I'm actually going to see Coach P tomorrow. He's on the staff at Florida, at least for one more bowl game. I'm down here in Tampa at the Gasparilla Bowl, so I'm going to see Florida play Central Florida tomorrow night, and I will see Coach P for a minute.
And Nick, you've had a tremendous journey. I went back to look at your profile and your journey to where you're at today. And another thing that stood out, obviously, people know Bill Belichick, but you were on that first Super Bowl championship for Bill as the director of operations. What was that like with Bill Belichick?
Yeah, I guess luck just has followed me around in my career. It was awesome. The beginning of that year, that was Bill's second year. They were 5-11 the year before. He had got fired from the Browns before. So it was not the Bill Belichick and the Patriots that we know today. But I suspect he hasn't changed a bit from then until now. It was awesome. He expected a lot, but he was very, very clear on what he wanted you to do. Fortunately, I did a good enough job for him that he liked me. And we keep in touch to this day. So it's a very, very special relationship for me.
So, Nick, the best time of the year, I say March Madness is a close second. And I'll get into a few things about that in a little bit. But bowl season's the best. I would take 100 bowl games. And some people say, wow, there's too many bowl games, this and that. But going from where you were a year ago, and I think there was only 26 bowl games because of
That's
COVID
right.
a year ago,
Yeah.
and now we're back at full strength. So hopefully, right? I know there's some things that came up today, but
Yeah, I think we will
what
be. We'll have solutions for that. But yeah, it's awesome to be back. People love bowl games. I've said a lot in the last couple of weeks. We own December. I think Santa Claus thinks he owns December. We'll give him his day on the 25th, but the rest of the month is bowl season, and it's one of those unique times a year on the American sports calendar. You mentioned March Madness. You got the NFL playoffs in January. You got the NHL and the NBA in the spring. I'm a big baseball fan, but admittedly, October baseball is a whole new level. And bowl season is the same kind of thing. It's a unique, 3-week time of the year. People will turn the TV on a Wednesday afternoon between Christmas and New Year's to see what bowl game's on. They don't even know what game it's going to be. They just know they're going to find one. It's probably going to be two teams they've heard about all year and didn't have a chance to watch, and they watch it. And it's a great thing. It's very unique in that way.
Well, I've been following your podcast with all the different stories from a lot of different people, and you've had some great guests on. And when you talk about the traditions, for me growing up, and I think it was the same for Kirk Herbstreit, the Rose Bowl was it for me. So I had always told my mom and dad, and I'm a Fordham grad. I played football for Fordham for Dave Clausen, and growing up, it was always the Rose Bowl. So I told my mom and dad when I graduated high school, they said, what do you want for a present? I said, well, I want to go to the Rose Bowl. So I ended up going. My mom, God bless her. Christmas morning, there were roses all over the Christmas tree with a note on there with tickets. My dad and I ended up going to the Rose Bowl. It was during 9/11. It was the national championship game between Miami and Nebraska. Wasn't a good game, but it was still the Rose Bowl. Talk about some of the traditions of these games. They're so special.
They are. And you mentioned the Rose Bowl, and why wouldn't you? It was the first game, first bowl game, ever. And, everybody knows the Rose Bowl. I think most people know, the Orange Bowl and the Sugar Bowl and the Cotton Bowl and the Fiesta Bowl as well. There's 44 bowl games now. Some of them are newer. Syracuse has been to the Pinstripe Bowl. We have the Military Bowl down in Annapolis, close to where I live. I'm down in Florida, like I mentioned, in the Gasparilla Bowl. There's a number of bowl games, all have a different purpose, a different meaning, and a different mission. College football is unique, right? There's a 14 playoff now, even if it goes to 12.
Mm-hmm.
That's not enough spots to accommodate all the deserving teams that have had a successful season. You look at Wake Forest, and we'll probably talk about that in a minute at the Gator Bowl with their opponent having some health issues. They had an unbelievable season, 10-2 in the regular season. They're going to the Gator Bowl. Every bowl game is meaningful to the student athletes who participate in them and the communities that host them. You watch some of the games that have been played already. There's been about a dozen. You look at Coastal Carolina celebrating, winning their first bowl game ever. You look at Liberty University celebrating. You look at UAB after they upset BYU, might have been one of their biggest upsets ever. And the words that come out of and the emotions that come out of these student athletes' mouths, for a lot of them, it's the last game they've ever played or they will ever play with their friends, with their teammates. And it really creates memories that last a lifetime. It's such a special time of year for so many reasons.
And Nick, I look at it, and you might have touched on this on your podcast, but some of these matchups that we have, you look at North Carolina playing South Carolina, and my favorite bowl always, and I think it's always a high scoring game, is the Holiday Bowl. You got NC State to go play UCLA, so you have a lot of teams. UCF, Florida, which is another one in the state of Florida. You wouldn't see those matchups during the regular season.
No, you hit on a point there that I often make. I think, on the list of things of why bowl games are interesting and meaningful, it's the compelling matchups. There's actually 17 games this year out of the 44 that are between two teams that have never played each other before, which is pretty amazing. And sometimes it's geographic diversity, like you mentioned, NC State going out to play UCLA. Sometimes it's teams that just wouldn't schedule each other. University of Florida is not excited about playing Central Florida, but everybody's excited to see it. Can the big boy hold off little brother, in the state? And that game's sold out tomorrow. You mentioned North Carolina, South Carolina. Again, they're probably bigger rivals off the field and on the field because they don't want to schedule each other. It puts a lot of stress on the program. But fans want to see it, and I think bowl games deliver that in a unique way.
And I always will fight, and argue with people who say there's too many bowl games. A lot of them will say, well, you turn on, the Belk Bowl or whatever bowl it's on there. You don't see many fans at some of the games in the stadiums. But then when you see these players at the end of a game celebrating what it means to these players, it's extra practice time. For some of these teams, it might be rebuilding, some momentum going into the following year. These games mean something when you ask these coaches and players.
Absolutely. I mean, in-person attendance is tricky. There's a lot of factors involved. In general, in-person attendance is declining across sports, but it's also a hard time of year. It's the holidays. Just because people aren't in the stands doesn't mean people aren't interested. I mean, you know, you see games averaging 3, 4, 5 million people watching them on TV. Um, that tells you a lot right there. People want to see these games. And again, as you said, as we both said, the experience that the student athletes get is just memories that last a lifetime.
And of course, Nick, we saw the news, and I just actually saw it a little bit ago on Wake Forest, and they're looking for an opponent because of the COVID and injuries with Texas A&M. What's the criteria now? Because most of the schools, I saw Rutgers, I saw Marshall, I saw some other teams being mentioned, but some of those schools that aren't in bowl games, it might be 5 and 7. They got to be home for the holidays, right? It's got to be tough to find an opponent.
For sure, but what's been interesting, and I think this speaks to the popularity of bowl games and the desire of teams to play in them. The 5 and 7 teams that were reached out to through their conference offices, there's a handful that want to play in the Gator Bowl. Fortunately, that game is still 10 days away, so there's time. You even have teams that have already played in game, the Coastal Carolinas, the UABs, the Liberties, that have said we'll play another one. I don't know if that'll happen or not. I certainly hope Wake Forest gets to experience a bowl game opportunity because they deserve it. They've earned it. So I think we're going to, keeping my fingers crossed, we're going to find a way to get that game played. I'm just not sure where the team is going to come from, but I know there's a lot of teams that are extremely interested in playing in the Gator Bowl.
And I know, Nick, too, you were quoted for, the impact with the college football expansion. You were in favor of whether it's 12 team, whatever they go to. How much interaction do you have with the playoff committee?
Quite a bit. Bill Hancock and I are friends. We communicate on a regular basis. Part of my job is to maintain dialogue with all 10 commissioners. And my position's been kind of simple. Look, we're not going to dictate to them what the playoff should be. We'd love to be involved in the conversation, and we'll be very supportive of whatever they come up with, because the reality is, all 10 commissioners to a man agree with me. The bowl system is really important to them. No matter what conference you're running, you work for your entire membership. So even if you want to say the SEC's on top, Greg Sankey does not just work for Alabama in Georgia and Florida. He also works for Kentucky and Tennessee and Vanderbilt and Mississippi State, right? Teams that may not challenge for that playoff anytime soon. They need meaningful postseason opportunities. You go to other conferences, it's the majority of those conferences. Bowl games are really important to them, and those commissioners want to see the bowl system and bowl season be as healthy as it can be.
And Nick, you see a lot of these players now that are opting out. Kenneth Walker, the Michigan State running back, opted out. Kenny Pickett opted out, amongst others. Could the bowl committee, your group, can you guys do anything to try to entice these players to stick around? I know money's an issue with the players. It's a personal decision, so I don't know if you can do anything about that. But has there been any talks about how to entice these players?
There really hasn't, Rocky. I mean, that's a personal decision, as you mentioned. It's also up to the institutions and the conferences to handle that. Our bowl organizations do a great job of hosting the players that opt in, and 99% of them do. Any player that wants to opt out, that's their decision. Quite frankly, I feel bad for them. I think it's a symptom of society today. Not to get on my soapbox, but people want to, with the NIL and paying players and them having a greater voice. They use the word adult a lot with these kids. They're not adults. My son's a freshman in college, and he's 6'5", but he's far from an adult. I think the adults who have influence over these student athletes need to do a better job of coaching them. I'm pretty certain that 20 years from now, the guys who played in bowl games are not going to say, "Boy, I wish I skipped that." But on the flip side, kids who opted out, very good chance they say, "Boy, I would give anything to play one more football game for my school with my friends." So I feel bad. I think some of these kids are a little misguided.
And I think this year there were 82 eligible teams and there were 83 spots. And I think Hawaii was the 6 and 7 team, right? That ended up in
Yeah.
the Hawaii Bowl.
Yep.
This way all the teams got in. And again, a lot of people will go back and say, well, geez, these teams that are 5 and 7, 6 and 7, they don't belong in bowl games. But then once these teams get in bowl games, it's a competitive game. They're good football games.
Really good football games. And you got to remember, 6 and 6 is, it's all relative, who you are as a program, where you are in your development. I just got off the phone with Greg Schiano earlier today, who's a good friend, right? If they were 6 and 6 this year, that would be an amazing season for them. It was amazing at 5 and 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all 6 and 6s aren't created equal. You look at Tulsa, who just had an unbelievable post-game emotion after winning their bowl game. They were 2 and 6. They had something to play for. They won their last 4 games, won their bowl game to finish 7 and 6. I don't know why we would deny any school the opportunity to have something to play for and something to work towards.
And how about for promoting the bowl games? You see a lot of the BCS, the playoffs, commercials, different marketing campaigns. Has there been any more talks with ESPN to try to promote it more?
Absolutely. So one of the cool things about building this bowl season brand, from a formal standpoint, is the reception we've received from all the stakeholders in college football, especially ESPN. They see so much value in it for them. Think about it. For forever, they've had to make up names for that time of year to promote it. Bowl Mania, Bowl Week. They've used bowl season unofficially, but now it's official, and you're seeing the logo, our bowl season logo, on a lot of the fields. Extraordinarily supportive. It's a little bit of an evolution. You're seeing our logo on the fields for the games this year. You're seeing bowl season on the crawl when the bowl game scores are coming. I think next year, when we have a chance to work with some corporate partners to integrate that name even further, you're going to see them promoting the entire bowl season in a more unique way than they have before.
And Nick, how about for yourself growing up? What were some of the bowl games that, as a kid, you looked forward to the most? And now being in your chair, you have all these bowl games. What are some that stand out to you?
Well, it's funny, growing up in Connecticut, I didn't have a bowl game that I could go to very easily. So it wasn't until I was, when I was at Syracuse working for Coach P, and we went to the Fiesta Bowl in 1992. That was my first bowl game ever. So that obviously made a great impression on me. So that has a special place in my heart. The Pinstripe Bowl has a special place in my heart. Growing up a Yankee fan, I approached the Yankees when I was at the Big East, and we created the Pinstripe Bowl together. So that'll always have a special place. But I remember when I was a kid during bowl season, you'd turn on some of these odd channels, that weird UHF button you had on the TV, and you'd see the Blue Bonnet Bowl and the Freedom Bowl and games that aren't around anymore. But I remember watching, I'm like, wow, that's just really cool. Like, what are these? It was like this intrigue and mystique about, like, how these teams end up playing in these games with these funny names, and I think that's just grown over the years. Back then, there might have been 15 bowls. When I was at Syracuse in 92, it was maybe 20 bowls. There's 44 now. And, we talked about the number of bowl games. No one's forcing any community to host a bowl game. No one's forcing any schools to go. So I think the number of bowl games speaks to how popular they are.
And you mentioned the Pinstripe Bowl, and this year I think it's the Fenway Bowl, right, in Boston?
Yes, this is the first year of the Fenway Bowl. I mean, how cool is that for a student-athlete experience to be able to play a game in either of those historic venues? I actually love the fact, one of the reasons we wanted to start the Pinstripe Bowl at the old Big East is to have a home bowl game. We were always the visitors. Our fans were traveling furthest. It was the hardest to get to. I think it's good for the game of college football to have a bowl season experience in the Northeast, and to give fans in the Northeast the exposure to college football. So whether it's the Military Bowl in Annapolis, the Pinstripe Bowl, Yankee Stadium, or the Fenway Bowl, I think they're all great.
Nick, what do you make of the coaches? You know, a lot of coaches have moved around. Lincoln Riley, obviously one of the big names, and Brian Kelly, deciding to move on, when Notre Dame had a chance to get into the playoff. What do you make of these coaches that are jumping and moving on during the season like that?
I understand why it might be distasteful to some people, but you have to, interject some perspective and look at both sides. If either of those coaches had a down season, Brian Kelly had a very uncharacteristic 4-8 season, bounced back with a 10-win season. If he was 7-5 the next year, maybe they would have fired him. If that can be done, and we all know it can be and has been. Why doesn't he have the right when he's doing well to capitalize on that and go somewhere else? If somebody offered me $100 million, it'd be really hard to turn down. I can tell you that much.
Well, we talked a lot about it on my podcast just last week. And, I said, and in a way, I give him some credit because he's leaving success at Notre Dame to now go against the SEC, week in and week out. I mean, it's a grind in there. Now, Lincoln Riley, we talked a little bit about him last week. I think he's going to hit a home run in USC. I think he's going to be there for a long time going to USC. But I think Brian Kelly, for me, when I looked at the two, making the jump to go into the SEC, I give him some credit for making that move. It's going to be a lot different for him.
I agree with you. I think it's a tough move. He went from one tough place, to tougher than people think, to win a national championship. He may have done all he can there, but to another place that's equally tough or tougher in different ways. Whereas Lincoln Riley, Oklahoma's going into that SEC now.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the Pac-12, and I'm not going to disparage any conference or their member institutions, but USC is the king of that conference. They might be down right now, but all things being equal, USC is the pinnacle job in that conference, and it's been proven you can win a national championship there. I think it's a better situation for him.
And we were talking a lot about the coaches moving around, and I was just looking with the transfer portal, 2,600 players in the transfer portal for this year, which is actually up over 1,000 compared to what it was the prior year. What's your thoughts on the transfer portal?
Yeah, I don't like it. I think it remains to be seen whether it's a good thing or bad thing for the student athletes. I think for a lot of them, it's not going to work out too well. I think there might be some kids that are stuck there. They think they're going to upgrade their situation. They leave a school and they have nowhere to go, or maybe they even have to downgrade their situation. I think it speaks to the lack of commitment people have. The grass is not always greener. You recruit a student athlete, he comes to a football program. I've done that. I've seen it happen once they get to campus and they start working and lifting and practicing. It's hard. It's really hard. It's not recruiting anymore. It's not dinners and getting your butt kissed. And I think for some kids, they think, okay, it's going to be easier somewhere else, and then they get there and it's not. So again, I think it's some of these kids are a little bit misguided, and I feel badly for some of them.
So with your travel schedule, you have to be all over the place with all these bowl games. How do you pick which games to go to?
It's not easy. I try to go to games. I don't know. I don't even know my formula, to be honest with you. I have a son who's a junior in high school, and my son who was a senior last year had his high school basketball season wiped out. So I realize how precious those opportunities are. So I'm not missing too many of his games. So you'll see some in and outs. So I'll get to eight bowl games, which I think is a good number.
So on your podcast, and again, I've been trying to catch as many of them as I can, watching some of the replays. Who have been some of your favorite guests that you've had on, you've interviewed?
Yeah,
they've all been great.
They've had so many good ones. Daryl Johnston was great because he's so thoughtful, such a good speaker, and obviously we have the Syracuse ties. Pepper Johnson is a personal friend. I worked with him on staff with Coach Belichick, and he had some fun stories about going to Tijuana when he was going to the Holiday Bowl at Ohio State. Rocket Ismail's enthusiasm probably is unmatched. If you hear him talk about being at the Orange Bowl and they're jet skiing and staying at the Ritz-Carlton in Key Biscayne. He mentioned there was a show at that time called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. Man, this was it. It was fun. Dave Wanstad had some good stories as a coach. And then coming out this week is Sean McDonough, another Syracuse alum,
Yep.
and Hall of Fame coach Barry Alvarez from Wisconsin. So that should be a good one coming out Thursday morning.
And Nick, I always ask on my show with coaches and athletes that I've talked to, who have been some influential people, throughout your journey that have helped you out along the way?
There's been so many of them, Rocky. I subscribe to the theory that at any point in time we are the sum of all our experiences, right? I think everything we do in life helps us get better, even if it's a negative experience at the time. It adds to who we are. So there's so many people in my career that I really think about often in terms of the impact they had on me. Certainly, my dad is at the top of the list. Coach P is close second. He was like a father figure to me, and I talk to him often. Coach Belichick was a big influence. I learned a lot from him in terms of how to manage people, and Mike Tranghese, the famous commissioner of the Big East, really taught me how to build consensus amongst a group. He had a very different style than Coach Belichick and Coach P as he needed to. He was an administrator, not a coach.
Mm-hmm.
So I learned something from all of them, and there's others, but I was very, very fortunate to be working for some great places and with some great people.
And Nick, you guys partnered with First Team Venture. I just actually caught some of it for bowl season radio that debuted this postseason. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yep. So with the bowl season brand and this Halo brand, if you will, that pulls together all the bowl games, we're able to do a lot of unique things that the bowl system was never able to do before. One of them I'll mention before we get to the radio was the Extra Yard for Teachers program, which is part of the College Football Playoff Foundation. They work with the 6 CFP bowl games, but they also work with other bowl games, which was unbeknownst to me. So we started an initiative with them where all 44 bowl games opted into this program, whether it's a matching grant program to give resources to teachers in the communities that host bowl games that to help them teach more effectively. So it's the Bowl Season Extra Yard for Teachers program, which we could have never done before. Bowl Season Radio, we have 18 of the games on Bowl Season Radio, partnered with First Team Ventures. We're able to package them together and sell them collectively. They say Bowl Season Radio in and out of breaks. We have a new Game Day Live page on our website, bowlseason.com, where you can click on, during the games, you can click on the link that takes you to an external site to wherever TV is found. An audio link, you can go right to Bowl Season Radio, and then live stats as well. So any live information you want on bowl games, if you're not in front of your TV, you can go to bowlseason.com, Game Day Live.
Nick, I know your bowl stories. A lot of your guests have come on and talked a lot about some of their stories, and some former players gave some of their memories. Do you have, since in the position you're in and attending some of your bowl games, and even from back maybe when you were at Syracuse, do you have any bowl stories that stick out for you?
Yeah, I have two. I have a number, but I'll tell you two. So first bowl game with Syracuse at the Fiesta Bowl. I'm up in the press box or the coach's box sitting with Coach DeLeon and Coach Coyle, the coordinators at the time. And they just put in a new turf at Sun Devil Stadium. It was a sand-based turf for drainage, and it was a disaster. There were divots constantly, but game's about to start. Ralphie comes running out of the tunnel with Colorado, and they got these handlers. But between the footing for the handlers and the Buffalo, it's swinging right in front of our bench. And we're up in the coach's box. I honestly thought that animal was going to wipe out our entire sideline and we'd never play the game. So that sticks out in my mind. In terms of a professional, pride, like I said, I grew up a Yankee fan. I was instrumental in starting the Pinstripe Bowl. Yankees have given me a lot of credit for that, and they treat me great to this day, which is one of the best professional perks I've earned. The very first Pinstripe Bowl, Syracuse was in it against Kansas State. So I remember being on the sideline pregame, standing there with the Yankees executives and the people from Syracuse, and they're like, "Boy, you must be really proud of this." And it was kind of my career to that point, really coming together in one spot.
Are you able to give any predictions? Are you allowed to do that for the two semifinal games? Are you leaning one way or another?
I don't know if I'm allowed to or not, but either way, I don't know if I could. I can see the games going either way. I don't think people give Cincinnati enough credit for being a good team. They should have beaten Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, in the Peach Bowl last year. And you think of Georgia, you think of Alabama, same conference, same quality of team. So I wouldn't put it past them. And Michigan just is one of those teams this year that seems like they're a little bit of a team of destiny too. So it wouldn't surprise me to see any of the four matchups that are possible in the championship game.
So I am I root for Wake Forest just because I played for Dave Clawson when I was at Fordham. And so I followed his career every step of the way. But I've been a big Michigan fan my whole life. And the tough part for me has been my wife's an Ohio State fan who is from Oregon. So, of course, she's had bragging rights in my family for a long time. We went to North Carolina for Thanksgiving and we drove. So it was a 12-hour drive. Now, my wife says to me when we get there, well, we're going to be leaving on Saturday to come home. And I said, my wife's name is Lindsay. I said, Lindsay, you do realize Saturday's the game. I haven't missed a Michigan-Ohio State game in a long time. So I had to get Sirius radio on her car coming home just so we can listen to the game. And for 3 hours, you could hear a pin drop in my car because she didn't have anything to say because Michigan was winning. And then after the game, she says, well, it's about time. They haven't beat us in 10 years, right? So I'm pulling for Jim Harbaugh. I'm pulling for Michigan. I think they're going to give Georgia a game. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think.
I agree with you. I think in general, I admit, the SEC is a great conference, top to bottom. But I don't remember them inventing the game either. I think there's other places that play pretty good football. And
how about, Luke Fickell? I mean, I've been so impressed with him, and his name's come up for every big job that's come up this season. He's stood by Cincinnati. I always say he's a Midwest guy. Other than the Ohio State job, I think he's at the perfect place. I think they're going to play with Alabama for a little bit.
I think so. I mean, we said it earlier, the grass is not always greener. He grew up in Ohio. He lives in Ohio. I'm sure he's got all his friends and family close by. Money's money, but there's more to life than that, I think.
So, Nick, the last thing I wanted to ask you, with the COVID stuff now, you see the NBA players, you see the NHL, you see the NFL, and now you see the news with Texas A&M. Do you think the playoffs, do you think some of these bowl games now that haven't happened yet, are we in jeopardy of possibly losing some games?
Yeah, it's hard to predict. I mean, so much of this, all of it really is out of our control. I think, unlike last year, where there was a lot of fatigue after the regular season. There were no fans. Kids had to get tested every day for 4 months. The bowl experience wasn't going to be the same. They were going to go in the day before, play the game. This year's very different because these kids really want to play in these bowl games. So I think they're going to exhaust all avenues to play, and be as safe as possible in doing so. So I'm optimistic that we'll get the games played.
Well, Nick, it's great to have you on. I can't thank you enough for taking the time, and I hope we get all these bowl games in. And I've enjoyed reading up on you and following you, and I'll continue to follow you going forward. I really appreciate it.
Anytime, Rocky. Pleasure visiting with you. Enjoy the rest of bowl season.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Nick. Appreciate it. So that was Nick Carparelli, the executive director for college football for the bowl season. And I was just on lunch today and I saw the breaking news on the Wake Forest and Texas A&M game, the Gator Bowl, Texas A&M with all the COVID cases and some injuries. So now they're looking for an opponent. I think we're going to start to see more of this. Hopefully it's not going to affect some of these bowl games that haven't happened. And who knows with the two semifinal games, right? Alabama and Cincinnati and Michigan and Georgia, and then the national championship game. So we'll wait and see. Next Wednesday, the No Huddle podcast will be the final episode. We've had 8 shows this football season, which has been fantastic. We will dissect the two semifinal games. We'll give our predictions. And then the following Sunday, the Mohawk Valley Sports Watch returns to WKAL 1450, 103.3 FM. We'll be airing on Sundays from 9 to 11. We're moving from Saturday to Sundays because of my kids' schedules with sports and everything. So I'm excited for that. So Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy New Year. And thanks for tuning in tonight on The Rock Pile. And remember, The Rock Pile is where dreams become reality. Have a good evening, everybody.